Good evening to everyone. We'll start from the new part, that means Sri Lankan economy. Sri Lankan economy. That day I told that this section having two parts. One is the national policy, and another thing is the familiarization of the Sri Lankan economy. This is just a comparison because here this complete Sri Lankan economy presentation I have to change from last September. I did for the last B paper, but all the slides are now obsolete and completely changed due to the present crisis, and I have to change. But just I kept one slide for your comparison. In here you can see first 9 boxes refer to the September 2021, and the second, your right hand side one, refer to the March 2022. In here you can see inflation, because there are a lot to cover. Because of that I am doing somewhat fast. Anyway, I have shared all these slides with you. You can go through the slides freely, and if you have any questions, you can send an email or call to me for a further clarification, but I will try to cover much as possible. Okay, here NCPI means National Consumer Price Index, SDFR means Standing Deposit Facility Rate, SLFR means Standing Lending Facility Rate. Here just think about the inflation. In September it was mentioned as 6.2, now it's 21.15 March, and just see the economic growth they have mentioned for the Q2 12.3, but actually in Q3 it was minus 1.5. That means these previous values were completely manipulated values, not the correct values. Maybe due to that time government intention was not to give the correct information. Here you can see Q2 in March 2022 they have mentioned the Q3 value, because up to now I think normally this quarter 2022 first quarter up to now they have not computed, and Q4 also may not be available, but you can see a drastic difference. Q2 12.3 positive growth, and end of Q3 it's minus 1.5. That means in March 2022 when they published these things, they have corrected all these manipulations. Here you can see that time US dollar was kept it as fixed value as 202 rupees, and now it's nearly 350, but today I think around 360. Here other main thing, I think if you watch the news, once this new central bank governor assumed the duties, first thing he did is to change the policy rate. I think that previously they have kept the two policy interest rates. Those are called standing deposit facility rate and standing lending facility rate. That means bank to bank link. That means central bank is providing financial facility to the banks. Then when the bank requests the money from the central bank, the interest rate applied by the central bank mentioning for the lending and deposit for the these are the policy rates. Based on the policy rate, banks will determine the interest rates to the consumers. That means fixed deposit and maybe the housing loan, maybe the personal loans, maybe the credit card interest rates, all the things determined by based on this policy rate. Now they have increased the policy rate to 13.5. Here you can see all the other things are like fixed values, but here you can see another main thing is the interest rate. Interest rates, treasury bill interest rate, previously 1 year interest rates, they have given the 8.1%, but now they are giving nearly 24% interest rate. Here, I think if you can remember previously, bank interest rates are very low. Because of that, no one deposited or maybe no one saved their money in the banks. That now they have increased the interest rates. Now their main objective is to attract the cash in hand with the consumers, and they want to encourage the people to make more savings in the bank. Otherwise, so many cash people will utilize for the day-to-day expenses, then automatically inflation will go up. Now, as a mitigation measure, banks are giving a higher interest rates, and then automatically people will go to the banks and they will save. And once the bank get that money, they may take a decision for the give that money to the housing loans or whatever the things, other loan facilities, higher than these interests, higher than the rate bank is providing for the FD. Now I think FD interest rate is around 14, 15. Some banks offer 17. It depends on the banks. Credit card, cash advances, fees, all the other rates also, they have increased from 18% to 30%. Main root cause is once the central bank increase the policy rates automatically for the deposits as well as for the lending purposes. That means housing loans, everything, interest rates will go up. That's the snapshot of the present scenario. Okay, other unemployment, population per capita, all the things are same as the previous September 2021. Okay, we'll just go through these technical terms. I wanted these technical terms, otherwise I can't proceed with the lecture. Just I will explain these things. I think maybe you have heard, sometimes you may not heard, but to understand the economic, Sri Lankan economy, definitely you need these terms. Just to keep aware these terms, and maybe no need the exact economic meaning, but just try to understand the term. One is called the aggregate demand. Aggregate demand means it's four things are there. One is the consumer spending on goods. That means now consumer means the people. When people spend on the goods and services, that's the total of the total amount of spending. Then I is the private investment and corporate spending on non-final capital goods, factories, equipment. G is government spending and net exports. That means that's the total demand in the economy. Consumer spending, private investments, government spending, and net exports. That's a one definition for the aggregate demand. And other two terms are the GDP. GDP means gross domestic product. And other one is a gross national product. There is a minor difference, but when you present the values, those two values are different values. With GDP means total market value of all final goods and services produced within the country. And that means GDP includes only the total market value of final goods and services produced within the country. GNP means gross national products. That it's like a GDP plus output produced by country's citizens. That means if you are a Sri Lankan citizen who worked in the Middle East, then that income also that amount also included to the calculation of the GNP. Normally, GNP is a higher value than the GDP, but normally GDP referred to the goods and services produced within the country. Normally, all the values, nominal values based on current dollar terms, there are two values. One is mentioned the nominal value, other one is called the real values. And nominal value based on the current dollar terms, that means today's term. Real values means reference to the base year base adjust for the inflation. That means normally all these consumer price indexes all were calculated based on some year. Normally here in Sri Lanka, there is a base year, normally 2010 was the base year. Then the percentage increase, everything, they are calculated based on the reference year. No, only here in the, when you are learning economics, there are two things. One is called the nominal value. Other one is called the real value. Real value is based on the year. Nominal value based on the current dollar terms. Normally interest rates also, there are two types. One is called the floating interest rates. Other one is the fixed interest rates. I think if you borrow a loan from the housing loan from the any bank, first thing they are asking whether you want to go for a floating interest rate or the fixed interest rate. Normally, floating interest rate means the current interest rate, but every month or every year, they are adjusting your loan based on the current value. But when you go for a fixed interest rate, bank will decide the fixed interest rate, let's say 10% for the 20-year term. But when in a floating interest rate, normally they mention, let's say if you take, if you have taken a loan around 6 months, 8 months back, based on the floating interest rate, and normally they have provided you a loan around maybe 9% interest rate, maybe 8% interest rate, but definitely now our present interest rate will be around, let's say 18% to 20%, then most probably from next month onwards, they will change your, adjust your interest rate to the present interest rates, 18 to 20%, because you have obtained the loan based on the floating interest rate. But fixed interest rates, normally banks mention that interest rate is fixed for throughout the period, but normally in every agreement, they have mentioned maybe around 5 years time or maybe 3 years period, they will review the interest rate. It depends on the bank policies. Okay. Only two things I want to highlight in the interest rate, floating interest and the fixed interest rates. Then here in a government, there are several accounts like when government is doing the accounts, same way in a company, current account, capital account is there. In here, current account, they have mentioned two things. One is called the visible trade accounts. That means all the trading, that means import, export. If the imports are greater than export, then definitely you are having a deficit. If the exports are higher than imports, surplus. I think during the COVID period, our export for a particular month or maybe for a week, sometimes our exports are greater than imports. Then we can see our current account having a surplus, but that does not mean throughout the year our accounts are surplus, but every country prefer to have a surplus. That means if the country is a full industrial export oriented company, then definitely your exports are greater than the imports, then you are having a positive balance. Normally in economic terms, we call it as a surplus. If it's negative, we call it as deficit. Then they are having, in addition to the visible account, there is a invisible trading account. That means services, tourism, remittances, whatever the interest. That means, let's say if the Sri Lankan government has invest in some foreign bank or some foreign country, then we are countries getting the interest, all the things we call, they will account in the invisible trade account. Then there is another account called the capital account. That capital account, all the capital inflows and outflows are accounted. If we are having higher inflows, that means whatever the capital investments we are getting, only the capital amounts we are referring here, not the recurrent values. All the inflows, if the inflows are higher than the outflows, then we are having the surplus in the capital account. If the outflows are higher than the inflows, that means if we have to pay all the interest, then it's a capital outflow. That means interest, that means let's say now when we request some investment, let's say for the road development for the Southern Highway, is then when we get the amount, total amount, maybe it's a loan, that amount initially we can keep it as a capital inflow. Then every year or every month we have to pay the premium and the interest. Then that's a outflow. It's like we have to repay the loans. Those are outflows. Now, if the outflows are greater than inflows, then we call this deficit. Now you can imagine the present Sri Lankan situation with these two accounts. Other one is the borrowings and reserves. Sri Lankan reserves, if the reserves are higher than the borrowings, then the surplus. If the borrowings are greater than the reserves, then deficit. Normally, we call this is as a balance of payment. Is the balance of payment is a measure of all the financial transactions flowing between one country and all other countries during a specific period. That means from now we have to think our country as a Sri Lanka. Then Sri Lanka, we are having inflows to the Sri Lanka and outflows from the Sri Lanka. Inflows to Sri Lanka is like exports are there. Then service industry, tourism industry, remittances, interest. Interest means whatever the investments by Sri Lankan government, then that interest I'm talking about. Then that's also inflow. Then the capital account, capital inflow. Then the whatever the reserves we are having, it's also a fixed value. Reserves are there. Just forget about the reserves, all the other things. Then what would be the outflows from Sri Lanka's outflows? And then we have to pay the premiums. Then we have to pay the interest. Then the imports. All the things going out. Then normally, if the country is mentioned the balance of payment equilibrium, means if we have a, let's say, positive deficit capital current account, maybe deficit capital account, maybe negative financial accounts, but total would be zero. If it's zero, then we can say our country is at equilibrium. If the balance of payment is positive, means deficit surplus means country is in a good economic stable condition. If the balance of payment is negative, means it's a deficit, then country is in a declining trend. Now just imagine what would be our present scenario. I will explain what are our present values, but just think now why we are having our import bans, mainly import bans, because we don't have pay foreign currencies. That means our export income is less than the export, means in our current account. Think about the total current account, not only the exports, remittances, tourism, service industry, interest. all the things, and let's say our main outflow in the current accounts is the imports, then at present we are having a deficit. That means our imports are higher than the all our that means positive inflows to the current account. In capital account also, we are not getting anything for the investments now. And that's why if Sri Lanka can attract more investments at present, then definitely we are getting more inflows to the capital account, and then we can repay the loans. But at present, we have to pay so many loans, debts. Then that means our outflows are more than inflows. Then capital account also having a deficit, and current account also having a deficit. In financial account, our reserves now, I think previously, maybe around 1 week back, our previous finance minister clearly mentioned our reserves only we are having around 50 million US dollars. Up to now, I think it's maybe almost zero, because yesterday's Prime Minister's speech, he clearly mentioned that we need around 75 million US dollars for the this week to buy the essential goods. And indirectly, he mentioned that we don't have that 75 million at all at present. That means our reserves are zero. That means we have to take more borrowings from the outside countries. Then our borrowings will be higher than the reserves. That means that also a deficit. That means indirectly, our country's present situation is balance of payment is a negative value. It's a deficit. Okay, we'll go by one later, just going through these economic indicators. Then we can see the present situation in the country. Okay? Understand the working of the economy. That means what are the economic indicators? Normally, economic indicators we can identify in several headings. One is the production related, income related, employment, price levels and inflation, fiscal policy, also referred to as a budget policy, demand management policies, also referred to as monetary policies. Demand management means now how to restrict the demand of particular product. Now, if you want to restrict the fuel usage, one thing is we can increase the fuel, or give some fuel coupons likewise. That means now government has taken a decision to restrict the per vehicle fuel amount as I think 8,000 Sri Lankan rupee worth of fuel they are pumping into a vehicle. That kind of demand management policies, but indirectly it's to control the monetary policies, trade and industry policy, balance of payment, international wealth and liabilities. Now, selected indicators, we'll see those things: the rate of growth of GDP, rate of growth of per capita GDP. Normally GDP you can identify as a LKR value, and after that you can divide by the population and the per capita GDP. That's a normal comparison. Per capita means per person. The rate of unemployment, the rate of inflation, the rate of domestic savings, the rate of national investment, change in the structure of the economy, the capital output ratio, likewise, so many indicators are there. The economic indicators, the budget surplus, deficit, current account, and overall. That means normally I mentioned that balance of payment, there are one thing called the current account surplus or deficit, then revenue as per percentage of the GDP. These are the different indicators. I am not asking anything about how to calculate these indicators or anything. Only thing is, if there is something economic indicator, you should be able to interpret that indicator. I think since all of you are engineers, you know how to interpret the value, because if you know the x-axis and y-axis, then you can interpret that value. That's not a big issue since you are an engineer. The growth of public debt, balance of payment, current balance, overall balance as a percentage of GDP, the terms of trade, the level of external reserves, and there are social economic indicators as well as the social indicators. See, this economic subject, actually, there are here we are talking about the macroeconomic aspect. That means the overall country. Then so many parameters we can define. Life expectancy at birth, maybe you can define the male, female, infant mortality rate. That means those things will give the indication of the health sector. That means now our infant mortality rate is very low. That means compared to the other countries, that means we are having a very good health system, mainly since we are having a very good community health system. Maternal mortality rate, that's also a very low value. Crude birth rate, crude death rate, total fertility rate, literacy level. Now I think our literacy rate also very high. School enrollment rate, prevalence of under 5 child malnutrition, poverty head counts. I think when compared with the other Asian countries, our social indicators are much better than the other countries. Okay, but maybe with the present crisis, our indicators may also get an impact, mainly these health related things and also the nutrition related indicators. Because of the high cost of living, people may not be able to buy whatever this nutrition product than previously. Then the political indicators also there. That means economic, social, political, regulatory of elections, freedom and fairness of elections, sharing of power, devolution of power, multi-party system, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of the media, incidents of political violence, incidents of grave crime, violation of human rights, governance, transparency, independence of judiciary, corruption. Because why we have to consider these political indicators? If the political indicators give positive values, definitely majority of the lending agencies and the countries who intend to lend, they prefer to lend to such countries. That means, let's say if we want to get a loan from the European Union, their main criteria is they are asking the transparency, good governance, corruption-free, then the freedom and fairness of elections. Those things they are evaluating before giving the loans. That's the main important factor if we are having the very good political indicators. That's why majority of these African countries, they are not able to get the loans and other grants from the European nations, because their political indicators are very much lower compared to the other competitive nations. Other competitive means maybe the Asian countries, maybe Sri Lanka. European Union may prefer to give a loan to Sri Lanka than the African country. Okay, but ultimate objective is our government has to maintain those political indicators as much as possible. Okay. Another thing is the indicators. That means we can mention the indicators as outcome indicators and the input indicators. Outcome indicators are the GDP. Same thing, different words. Okay. Previously we mentioned economic indicators, social indicators, and political indicators. Now, same indicators you can categorize as outcome indicators and input indicators. Depends on the requirement. Maybe they depend on the institution's request. You can show the same indicators in different format. Okay. Outcome means the output, like that: GDP, life expectancy, adult literacy, unemployment rate, poverty head count. Input indicators: savings, investment, budget, surplus, deficit, school enrollment. Whatever I have here, only I have given some examples, but if someone wants, you can completely define all these political, social, economic indicators into two categories called as outcome indicators and the input indicators. Okay, that's one perspective of indicators. Then the level of aggregation indicators: GDP, life expectancy, fertility rate. Those are some example of aggregating indicators. Then single variable indicators also you can give: share of agriculture, infant mortality, primary school. Wait, I will explain the IMF conditions, because there is a separate part I have to, since this is a new thing, I will explain the IMF engagement. Okay. Then also the same thing, we can call it as a qualitative indicators, process indicators, indicators for good governance, transparency, accountability, non-discrimination, equity, inclusivity, participation. Here just you can see, now the question is regarding what are the indicators consider for the IMF loan. Then definitely they will look into the economic indicators as well as the political indicators as well. That's why they are, I think, once the IMF meeting is finished, central bank governor and the finance minister both inform to the public that they will proceed with the meetings once the stable government is formed, and once the social price is also stable, only IMF will consider to give the loan. But those discussions, they may proceed, but their commitment, definitely no one will give a loan or the financial assistance for an unstable country. That's why the most thing lacking in the African countries, because African countries, I think at the beginning itself, their poverty is still there because there's so much corruption. All the things are there compared to the Sri Lanka. I am not telling Sri Lanka is corruption free, but they are looking at the good governance, transparency, everything. They are evaluating before giving any loan. But when they are evaluating, they are evaluating these indicators in different perspective. Then government policies, what actions government does to achieve growth and stability of the economy. Wait, give me 1 second. There is a small. Okay. We'll first go through these terms and then we'll see the Sri Lankan present criteria. One is, okay, government policies. There are so many government policies. What actions government does to achieve growth and stability of the economy. But previous day we learned about the infrastructure development policies. That means national energy policy, national transport policy, maybe the education, everything depend on the related to the infrastructure development. But here mainly related to the growth and stability of the economy, mainly related to the financial sector. One is called the fiscal policy. This fiscal policy contains the taxation, that means expenditure, pensions, infrastructure, budget deficits, and its financing. That means it's just a name. We call this as a fiscal policy. Under fiscal policy, they identify all these taxation, then all the how the government expenditure, then how they will give the pensions, then what kind of infrastructure they are investment on the infrastructure, budget, how to finance the budget deficit. Then the monetary policies that mainly related to the interest rates, reserve ratios, money supply. Now, recently I told government has increased the policy interest rate. That refers to the one of the item in the monetary policy. Let's say if the government change the present VAT% from 8 to 15%, then that will related to the fiscal policy. Those are just example. Here I can't explain all the things in detail because here I am trying to give us some brief awareness and maybe how to write a question answer to the question in B paper. Mainly you should able to, when you are writing it could be a general question you are getting when you are explaining that general things. Every time you should try to refer or reference to the this kind of financial economic policy. Okay, maybe let's say interest rate, then it's better just mention the monetary policy. Then everyone knows that you know some relation between your knowledge and to the economic term. Then the industrial policies, specific measures, incentive targeting industry. Then trade policies, trade taxes, other import levies, exchange rate policy, how exchange rate is managed. Now you can see up to maybe April end, we had the fixed interest rate. That means it's like not a floating interest, floating exchange rate. Now it's floating. Floating exchange rate means now every day they are defining the foreign US dollar rate. But previously it's like a 203, 202. It's like a saturated value. It's like a government arbitrary fixed that value, but now it's purely a floating exchange rate. That's a policy on the government. Then the development policy, how wealth be distributed. That's one thing. We'll see. Maybe I am not explaining everything, but main thing I will explain. In the fiscal policy, because I mentioned fiscal policy related to taxation, expenditure, mainly those things, and how to finance the budget deficit. Then under fiscal policy, there are main two things they are targeting. One is the expansionary fiscal policy. Other one is the contractionary fiscal policy. Expansionary means if you want to expand something, then you are looked at as a expansionary policy. That means if you want to contract something, that means to reduce something, then you will adhere the contractionary fiscal policies. Now let's say introducing more tax into the consumer, that means the government indirectly wants to collect more money but their main, let's say, if government increase the VAT or the pay tax, then automatically your spending pattern may be reduced. Then they are adopting a contractionary policy. Let's say if the government reduce the taxation, then you have more money to spend, then that's expansionary policy. Okay, that's the concept, expansionary and contractionary. Then the social welfare also, they can go for the expansionary schemes or the contractionary schemes. That means if they cut some welfare, that means they are indirectly applying a pressure on the social welfare schemes. That means they are trying to reduce the welfare amounts. If they want more and more spend on the welfare, that means they want to enhance the welfare of the people, not only the welfare. That means they are spending more on the welfare. That means expansionary policies. Likewise, there are so many things you can see. And here main thing is, their main concern is to why we are introducing this expansionary or contractionary policy to control the inflation, to control the output growth. That means not the control output growth means not to reduce on output growth. That means they want to increase the output growth. Then to reduce the unemployment, they can use the expansionary and contractionary policies. And other main thing is, now normally we are not in an economic boom, we are at an economic recession. That means our economy is completely now going down. Then during this kind of recession, we may not expect private sector will invest to enhance the economy. That means private sector may think during the recession, why we will invest on any investment, because during the recession they may not get the profits they intended. They may not invest and they will keep their finances, and they will retain and see what will happen. But to overcome the recession, economy must operate. That means economy have to run, someone has to run the economy. Then automatically government should intervene and stimulate the economy out of recession. That means government should put their own money, maybe their reserves, to the economy to run the economy. I think that now at present, our government also doing the same, but now the issue is we don't have reserves to pump by the government to stimulate the economy. Now, when they pump the money to the economy, definitely they have to identify what kind of sectors they have to pump the money to stimulate the economy. Now, at present, government is bringing all the fuel, and they are selling these fuel at loss. That means that does not give any economic output. That means that's why I am telling a major concern is to enhance the output growth. But if they can pump the money to some sector and identify that sector will give output. Let's say if they can bring the chemical fertilizer with that money and give the that fertilizer to the agriculture sector, then definitely we know another 3 to 4 months we are having sufficient rice for our Sri Lankan use. But at present we are just giving money to the fuel to bring fuel. Okay, then it's just we are burning. That does not give any output to the economy. Okay, then definitely unemployment rate also go up. Then if government can select the priority on the sectors which they want to stimulate, then definitely unemployment rate also they can control. But up to now, we couldn't see any that kind of positive strategies by the government. Okay, then the balance of payment is a major challenge. What do you mean by the balance of payment? It's the current account, capital account, financial account. That's the just add the current account to the capital account plus the financial accounts. If we are having a deficit, that means we are having a very good situation. If we are surplus, if we are having a surplus, then we are having a very good situation. If we are having a deficit, then country have to face lot of foreign currency issues. That's the situation now at present in Sri Lanka. Trade is in perennial deficit, exports growth sluggish, and imports rising. Exports are narrow based, debt based capital against FDI. That means normally in a balance of payment, current accounts plays a vital role. That means if we can enhance our exports, then automatically our current account will be a surplus. But at present, we have to import everything. Now, including rice, we are importing. All the things we are importing, then automatically our situation is very critical at present. Okay, and challenges creating export growth, diversifying export growth vital for rapid economic growth. That's the main thing we have to look into. That means if the present government wants to stimulate the economy, definitely they have to identify the correct export sectors and they have to provide the stimulus package to enhance that exports. Now, I think during the COVID period, country survived mainly because our garment industries, they managed to fabricate all these health things. That means the mask, maybe this personal protective clothing, everything manufactured, prepared, fabricated by these garment industries. And during the COVID period also, our garments sector, they managed to earn more than $1 billion worth of exports. Okay, but all the other sectors, tourism sector, every other sector, those sectors were collapsed. Then the main seriousness of the balance BOP issue, you can see this is the perfect thing now in Sri Lanka. They hit very quickly. That means maybe unless you are, let's say if you have some reserves, they may think, okay, maybe next month that will get a positive outcome, maybe the next week. They are spending all the reserves until it deplete. I think that's the same thing happened through the previous central. Now I think previous means maybe the 2 to 3 months. Central bank policy, they utilize more than $7 billion to keep the our US dollar rate fixed as 203. They didn't look at the other aspects. Then ultimately they didn't have sufficient reserves. Then our whole economy was collapsed, and these are the consequences we can see. That means exchange rates clash. Then as soon as, let's say, if they manage the exchange rate at 203 with that $7 billion, as soon as they decide to float, it should stable around 230, 240, okay, maybe 260, maybe 50 to 60 rupees. It can increase, and it should stable. But once they remove the fixed amount, that means 203, and float the exchange rate, it will suddenly reach to 230, then next day 260, maybe 280, 300, nearly. I think within 3 to 4 days, it has been reached to 300 Sri Lankan rupees, and now within 1 month, it has reached to 360. That clearly gives the indication that previous central bank authorities, they didn't manage the foreign currency policies or the fiscal policies or the whole financial sector policies in a correct manner by looking at what the consequences, what kind of consequences we have to face. Okay, then finally, serious forex deficiency, forex means foreign exchange deficiency, will need bailout at the end. Now, Sri Lanka is almost at the bailout. Now we are talking about how to overcome this situation, maybe by going to IMF or whatever the other facilities. But here you can see, by understanding these few economic terms, how our country, because previously I think in 2019, our country had positive, that means plus 7.9 billion reserves at end of 2019. Now, now around 2022 March, we are telling we are having zero foreign reserves. Okay, that's the present situation at our country. Okay, then why we are having the deficit on BOP? I think you can just imagine, think about what are the factors in the balance of payment. That means the import, export, borrowings, reserves, in the capital accounts, capital inflows and capital outflows. That means main thing is higher government expenditure typically has heavy import content. That means our imports we are paying so much. Now, due to this fertilizer issue, country has to import so much rice also, because previously we didn't import that kind of amount rice, but very few months, that means very few period, we have to incur more foreign exchange to buy our basic need, that means rice. Now, as soon as country has to incur for the basic needs, then you may not be able to control the economy. This means rising government expenditure affects BOP current account. That means, and also the COVID also cause a big impact, because here the government health expenditure, they have to incur a huge amount on, that means unforecasted amount, unprojected amount on the health sector. That means they have to bring all these COVID vaccines, all these medicines, everything. It's an unexpected expenditure. Then definitely it's like a import expenditure increase. Then capital borrowings increase domestic liquidity. I think when you watch the news every day, government is telling we are borrowing loan from India, maybe we are borrowing loan from Bangladesh, we are borrowing loan from China. Likewise, they are buying these borrowings, but these borrowings are not mainly for the to overcome the liquidation. That means day to day routine, that means day-to-day items, essential things, to buy the day-to-day essential things, the government is borrowing these amounts. That means borrowings are very high, and normally, let's say borrowings are in the capital account. If the borrowings are, if we can use the borrowings into the, borrowings are in the financial account. If we can use these borrowings for the investment purposes, then we are getting the outcome later. But here mainly we use all these borrowings for to buy the day-to-day essentials. That means, that's why I told, if the government has to spend the foreign currency to buy the essential items, then that won't give anything in positive impact to the economy. That means after we eat, consume those things, okay, maybe you can see people are surviving, that's the different thing, but it won't give the output growth. That's the main thing we have to think. Then the steady capital borrowings, if we can get the capital borrowings, then automatically we can increase the reserves. Short-term borrowings can cause serious pressure on balance of payment. That's the main thing we are doing now. I think within maybe around 6 weeks to 2 months time, Sri Lanka has borrowed more than 2.5 to 3 billion US dollars from India, China, Bangladesh, or maybe Indian credit line, under different names. We brought so much borrowings, but that all the borrowings, it's indirectly that gives the negative deficit in the financial account. Lack of right fiscal incentives for exports, wrongful incentives, increased import could cause more trouble for the trade balance. Then the government policy for growth, government fiscal policy relate to closely to the growth, incentive-led export growth. That means government should every time give incentives to the export sector. Then promoting industrialization, rural development for income redistribution, trade tax to promote exports, provision for essential inputs like health, education, law and order, and defense for political stability. That's a must. We have to do it. Suppress heavily taxed goods with negative externalities, create public goods with positive externalities, providing funds at low interest rate. I think during these 3 years, we couldn't see any positive incentives to enhance the export growth. Okay, maybe due to the COVID or maybe other reasons, it depends. But definitely government has to, now at present also, if we, now tourism season is finished, now how to earn more foreign exchange. That's the main challenge we have to foresee. Then if the, otherwise every time we are looking at, okay, we are getting foreign currency through the tourism sector, but tourism sector, we are not getting a huge amount, maybe 3 to 4 billion US dollar income we can get. But our expenditure is more than, I think our total expenditure is around 18 billion US dollars per annum. And our income is around 13 billion Sri Lanka US dollars. Out of 13 billion, maybe around 3 to 4 billion from tourism sector. That means definitely we are having presently also we are having a deficit. Then now tourism sector also collapsed due to the global pandemic and other things. Now normally our tourism season is from October to April. Now almost the tourism season also end, then definitely government has to look into the other means. That means mainly the promote the exports. That's the main thing we should look into that. Managing price stability, low inflation, that means economic stability, maintaining exchange rate, keeping interest rates stable, managing budget deficit, keeping debt levels under control. Only thing is, now when the economy is collapsed or nearly bail out, we may not able to have a quick mitigation actions on these aspects. Now managing price stability, that means how to keep the low inflation rate. Now, let's say if the inflation is reached to 30%, then whatever the action we are taking now, that impact may take at least 2 to 3 months to stabilize the price. But there are so many other aspects. That means now if we don't maintain the exchange rate properly, then exchange rate will go up indefinitely. But now I think very recently we heard that the exchange rate is somewhat stable around 360, 365 Sri Lankan rupee. That means US dollar to Sri Lankan rupee exchange rate is around 365. Previously, it has been reached to 380. But I think now it's not an artificial thing. Maybe since this new central bank governor, he has taken a very stringent measures on the imports. Because of that, so many restrictions were imposed. Because of that, now somewhat it managed to stabilize, but that does not mean it could be for a very short term or maybe for a medium term, but definitely now government has to take immediate actions to sustain that stability. That means once only we are taking these other aspects, then we can keep it in a sustainable way. That's the main thing. Fiscal policies during crisis. Then you can see what kind of things now government has to look into. I think these things referred in the IMF and also Sri Lankan government is looking at. One is the stimulus packages and austerity measures. That means stimulus packages means now government has to promote exports. Then how to promote the exports? That means they have to give some stimulus package to enhance the export industry. Let's say you can see different ways. Sometimes one stimulus package given to the export sector that may impact to the other sector. Okay. Now, just see if government wants to give promote the industries. If government decide to give fuel to the concessionary rate to the export-oriented companies, then that may be that subsidy, we can call it as a stimulus package. Let's say if the government, now let's say electricity tariff. Now if the government, I think government intend to increase the electricity tariff, and if they want to give some concessionary or the subsidy to the industrial sector, that means if the government, let's say government say, no, we are not increasing the tariff on the electricity tariff on the industrial sector in order to promote the export-oriented industries, then that subsidy amount or the concessionary amount, we can call it as a stimulus package. Okay. That's just the example. Then controlling government budget deficit. Then controlling the government budget deficit means government revenue and the government expenditure. Then why deficit? Government expenditure is higher than the government revenue. Now it's in typical Sri Lankan terms, our expenditure is nearly 18 to 20 billion Sri Lankan rupees, and our revenue is around 12 to maybe 13 to 14 billion US dollars. That means 5 to 6 billion US dollar we are having a deficit. Okay, that means every year if we accumulate this one, that will be added every year. But our government main objective, government should mainly focus to reduce that deficit. That means first thing is they have to reduce the government expenditure. Okay, then how to reduce the government expenditure is a different story. Maybe they can go for a tax cut, or other one is to increase the government revenue. Then that also they can do. Then to increase the government revenue, only option is government, how government is getting the revenue, mainly through the taxation. Then they have to increase the taxation. That's why one suggestion is to increase the VAT percentage. Now at present it was 8%, and they want to increase into the 15%. And why? And you can, if you can remember, as soon as this president came to the power, he reduced the taxation VAT from 15 to 8%, and also he reduced the cost of fuel. Okay, maybe that time we thought it's a good decision. Okay, maybe that was a good decision if the country didn't have an impact on COVID or something. Okay, but that's unforeseen condition. But ultimately, that was government revenue, huge government revenue, they lost due to the reduction of the tax. They expect after reducing the tax, that means from 15% to 8%, that benefit will pass to the consumer or the people of the country. But due to the lack of government other policies, that benefit purely taken by some big companies, and that was not passed into the consumers. Same way, this sugar price tax reduction, those things, maybe we think when government is reducing the tax, they think their intention is good, and maybe they think all these benefits will pass into the consumers. But ultimately, some 2 or 3 big companies, they took the benefit, and ultimately people has to suffer. Okay, that's two different things. That means we think government intention is to pass through that benefit to the consumers. If they don't apply proper controlling mechanism, definitely these multinational companies, they are taking all these benefits. Another main thing is they should promote the foreign direct investments. That's a must. But only thing is to have the proper foreign direct investments, promote foreign direct investment. Country should have a stable political system, because normally all these investors, they will see whether normally they are investing for a longer period, not for a day-to-day investments. They are investing for a maybe 40 to 50-year term. Then they think consistent policies will be there. Okay, that's the main lacking item in Sri Lanka. Then the transfers and poverty alleviation programs for social stability, and during the crisis, definitely that should be a must. Then definitely during the crisis, poor people will suffer more than the rich people. Then definitely government has to identify the social affected people, that means impacted people, and they should have some poverty alleviation programs, public investment to create infrastructure. That's also a must, because I told a government must stimulate, then they should invest on the infrastructure. That's one aspect. I think our government, they did it in a wrong way. Then they just introduce I think 1 lakh projects in a sudden way, and they just start some roads and other things. But that does not mean now that means invest on repairing a road or a canal or that kind of thing may not give a impact on the growth of the economy. Okay, that will enhance the social comfortability, but that does not mean whatever the investment must lead to enhance the growth. Okay, leave space for private sector growth. That's also a must, because during the crisis, private sector may not willingly invest unless they are giving a proper stimulus packages. Then definitely the structural adjustments. I think everyone is talking about the structural adjustments in the government entities and other institutions. I think like yesterday's speech also, Prime Minister mentioned the privatization of the Sri Lankan airline. Okay, I am here giving just example. Okay, don't think I am giving a positive side for the Prime Minister and negative side for the previous government. It's just comparing the present situation for the easier understanding for yourself, just to compare. Make state sector focused and efficient, because that's the main thing. During the crisis, state sector has to do a big work to enhance the growth. Okay. Then fiscal policy, I think that's the same thing I have mentioned. Government revenue, government expenditure, and the deficit. It can be a deficit, very common, not enough revenue to meet expenditure, or overspending when economy is not doing well. That means when the government spends more than it taxes, that means government spends more than what they collect as a revenue. Okay, I'll explain the word tax holidays. It can be a surplus, a rare case, means government makes good revenue or being stingy when economy doing well. Balance extremely rare. Fiscal policy is neutral. In our case, we are having a deficit. That means our expenditure is more than the revenue. Here, one question is regarding what do you mean by the tax holiday? Tax holidays means normally, let's say if you want to promote the foreign direct investments, or maybe if under crisis situation to stimulate the economy through the private sector, normally every company has to pay the taxes. That means a corporate tax to the Sri Lankan government. Normally, every private sector company, they have to calculate end of the year, use their profits, and based on the profit, maybe 18% for the corporate tax. Now, let's say if the government wants to enhance the foreign direct investments or the private sector investments, they will give a tax holiday, let's say for 5 years, no need to pay the taxes. That's we call tax holiday. Maybe depend on the investment amount. Now it's just a thing I want to explain. Now this is not a tax holiday, but that's the way they presented. Now they mentioned if you are bringing $100,000 into a country, into Sri Lanka, and keep it for 10 years, that particular savings, then they mention they will give a golden visa to that person. Likewise, they will tell to the private companies, if they invest in Sri Lanka, let's say normally tax holidays having some holiday structure, tax holiday structure. If the investment is 10 million US dollars for a 10-year tax holiday, maybe 5 million, 5 years, likewise, they are mentioned. Okay. Then when a deficit situation, definitely you have to have a proper understanding of the size of the deficit, frequency of the deficit, means of financing the deficit, control on business cycle, direct or indirect. I think this is completely lacked in the previous central bank governor, because every time he mentioned we can manage the system. We are having sufficient funds, we are having sufficient resources. That means size of the deficit, I don't know whether with his knowledge or without his knowledge, then decision makers, actually central bank, finance ministry, they are the people should give the clear instructions or the directive to the political authorities, maybe the president, maybe the finance minister. This is the way, this is the size of the deficit, this is the frequency of the deficit, and how to finance this deficit. Because I think previously they thought without going to IMF, by getting financial assistance from India, Bangladesh, and China, we may able to overcome the situation. But definitely we may able to overcome the situation if our deficit is around 1 billion to 2 billion US dollars. Then that's why they mention size of the deficit and frequency. That means every month we need around 500 million US dollars to buy fuel only. Then every month we have to find the 500 million only to procure the fuel. And then all the other things we have to import. Maybe we need at least around 1.1 billion to 1.5 billion US dollars per month to import our essential things. Then if we borrow around 2.5 or 1.5 billion and think our economy will stable, then it won't happen, because we have not identified the size of the deficit and the frequency of the deficit. Then we haven't identified the correct means of financing. Then how to control the business cycle. That means how to control the expenditure, how to expand the revenue, whether direct methods or indirect methods. Also, we have not identified correctly. Okay, hope at least now our country may have identified the facts and they may put into a right track, but definitely it may take time. Okay. Then the government revenue, those are the things they have to think. One is the taxation, that's almost 90%. As soon as government reduces this tax percentage, definitely you can see it's around almost 90% of the revenue from the government. If they reduce, they didn't change the income tax or the corporate tax, they changed the pay tax also. I think they have expanded the pay tax limit. Previously it was around I can't remember the exact value. Now it's around up to first 3 million 6%, second 3 million 12%, after that 18%. But previously that tax rate is same, but the amount is different. That means now they have enhanced from, I think, yes, I can't remember exactly, 1.5 or 2 million was the first limit. Now they have enhanced into the 3 million. 2 million. They have enhanced the 3 million as a first slab. Then second slab up to 6 million. Previously it was 4 million pay tax. Then that from that also government has reduced the their income. Then VAT, that's the complete thing they have miscalculated. They reduce from 15 to 8%, trade taxes, other taxes, non-tax revenues, profit and dividends, fees and levies, those are the government revenues. And there are direct taxes. It could be a progressive income tax, payee, corporate taxes. Indirect taxes, normally they call it as regressive taxes. Sales taxes, that means pass on to a final consumer. Normally income tax, payee, cap tax, corporate taxes after the profit, corporate tax after the profit, payee tax, pay as you earn. Then the income tax also there is like a same thing, income tax and the payee tax. Normally whatever your salary, pay tax. Normally if you are doing some other thing, let's say tuition or whatever, the consultancy or whatever the things, it's called it as income, then income tax. But ultimately it's similar way, they are calculating the income tax and pay. Corporate tax relevant to the all corporate sector companies. Then the indirect VAT, import taxes, excise taxes. Now VAT, companies not born the VAT. Normally, let's say if we are buying 100 rupee product, then they will add 8% and you have to pay the 108 rupees. Then once they collect the 108 rupees, then 100 rupees companies turnover, then 8 rupees they have to send to the Inland Revenue Department, maybe in every quarter or end of the month. They have to calculate all the VAT revenue and they have to remit that to the consumer. Only that particular company, that means sales company, they are collecting that tax from the consumer and they will act as an agent to collect the tax. Then the deficit financing, what kind of financing sources we are having, foreign sources and the domestic market sources. Foreign sources, we can get concessional borrowings, institutional borrowings, foreign market borrowings. Concessional means maybe the government to government borrowings at a very low interest rates, or maybe a grant, that kind of thing. Or the long-term loan, let's say ADB, likewise. But institutional borrowings means ADB, World Bank, those are the institutions. Normally concessional borrowings, government to government loan. But foreign market borrowings means if you are taking a loan from a Exim Bank or whatever the not from the financial institution like ADB, World Bank. Maybe if you go for a, let's say, Indian bank, Exim Bank, or the Chinese Exim Bank, or maybe a Bangladesh bank, we are taking some higher interest rate market borrowing. Then domestic market sources, mainly we are getting the treasury bonds. Then maybe some non-market sources, maybe the rupee security, different words are there. Bank financing from the commercial bank or from the central banks, but whatever the things, ultimately, if we are taking a financing sources from the local market, ultimately there will be a circular impact within the country. But let's say if the deficit, that crisis like Sri Lanka at present, definitely we have to go for a foreign sources. Otherwise, if we try to finance through the local bank, that means ultimately cash within the Sri Lanka, we are getting that. But let's say if we know there will be black money or whatever the other money options, we want to get it, that domestic market sources also a possible thing. Then what are the deficit financing implication? Non-inflationary, but issue of crowding out. That means domestic case, that's the main thing. Crowding means it will create a cumulative impact and keeps interest domestic inflationary. Now, I think this is the very good example. Before April, we had a very low interest rate, and during the low interest rates, people, they are not willing to save, because let's say if we are getting 4 to 5% interest rate for your savings, you may think no point of saving those money on the bank. Maybe you will use that money to buy the goods. Then automatically your spending power will increase, and you are buying all these important goods. Then banks, they don't have enough money, enough cash. That means bank liquidity is low, because normally to bank to function, definitely people should go and save on the bank. Now people are not saving on the banks because the interest rates are low. Then definitely government has to print the money, and once they print the money, that money also pass to the people, and people again, once they receive that money to their hands, they are again not go to the banks and save, because interest rates are low, and they spend on all the unwanted things. Okay, they may go for trips, they may go and buy some luxury items, maybe because they are having the money. Then again, banks has to every month, they has to print the money. Then indirectly it caused the huge inflation by keeping the interest rate. That's the thing happened previously. Okay, and foreign concessionary loans also, because if they don't give a proper controls, then definitely this money get waste, and so many other things will be there. Then we see the Sri Lankan economy present challenges. You can see one is the COVID impact. Since I have to go through so many things, I will go to the other slide. Let's say these are the stakeholders. These are the present challenges we are having. You can see one is the COVID, shortage of foreign exchange, concerns about debt sustainability, weakened revenues, unfavorable sovereign ratings. We are unable to pay for our imports. So many things are there. Okay, and increase the unauthorized remittance flows. I think these are the main critical concerns at present in Sri Lankan economy. Okay, and you can see some economic indicators. Here you can see this is actually from the central bank report, end of 2021, because I don't know whether these values are correct, because this report was published by March 31st March, maybe by looking at the previous policies. Okay, that's why I'm not just doing in detail. Here you can see in 2021 our GDP growth is positive, but here you can see the GDP at current market prices. Here rupees billion, I told GDP can be expressed in the monetary value as well as the per capita GDP. Now here that value may be correct. It's around 3,800 US dollars per capita. That means per capita GDP. Okay, and there are other external trade balances, current account balances. Here you can see current account balances minus 4%, minus 4%. overall balance minus 3,967 US dollars million. Okay, that you can see these values here. Fiscal sector, current account, different sectors it's mentioned. Okay, monetary sector. Okay, all the things are there. I am not explaining all the things here. You can see most of these trade balances, current account balances, overall balances are in negative. That means nothing in positive, except then you may think how our GDP is positive. That's the concern. Definitely they have manipulate and show this is a positive GDP. That's why they are trying to, if we are having this kind of positive GDP, definitely our real values are not in negative values, or we may not come across this kind of situation at present. Okay, here you can see our price indices. These are the things here, just words. I have given all the things. You can refer these slides. One is called the headline inflation. Is a measure of the total inflation within an economy, including commodities such as food and energy prices, which tend to be much more volatile and prone to inflationary spikes. Core inflation is the change of the cost of goods and services, but does not include those from food and energy sectors. It depends on the way of they are calculating. Here just I mentioned there are two things, headline and core. Okay, here you can see the this is the most recent values I have taken these indices. You can see 2021 up to December, they just mentioned inflation is around 14%. But suddenly, January, they have put 18, 20, 22. Now here you can see, I think this was published in April, this indices. Then the central bank new governor and new minister was there. I think they have adjusted all these values. Otherwise, this should be continue. Continue means this value should start from around 12%, but it suddenly started from 18% and 24%. Now you can see the exact impact. Okay, these are the inflationary issues, monthly inflation. Here also you can see huge inflation in January compared to the December. That means they have tried to give the correct picture from January 2021, 2022 onwards, but those were corrected in April. Okay. Impact on money supply. Here, money supply, there are different money types. One is called the M1 supply, M2 supply, and M2B. Here, M1 means the main liquid portion. That means currency. That means cash in hand, like that. That means coins, currency, demand deposit, other liquid deposit. But M2 means less liquid nature includes M1 plus. That means M1 money plus savings, time deposits, and others. Here, time deposit means long term, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 12 months fixed deposit. But M1 means very quick, maybe 1 day, 7 days, like that, very quick term deposits, and purely the liquid cash. Broad money includes the supply time saving deposit held by the public with commercial banks, and also include the part of foreign currency deposit of commercial banks. Just I have given the things here. Also you can see in 2021 our money supply in different money, and January, February in 2022. This also gives a very clear picture that at 2021 year, all our statistics were manipulated statistics. That means government did not give the correct picture to the decision makers, we don't know whether government or maybe the government may request the officials to do that one. That's a complete manipulation they have done by showing these incorrect values. But maybe from January onwards, they wanted to show the real picture of our economy. Okay, depletion the economy over years. You can see the GDP. Here you can see in 2020 and 2021, they have put a plus value. This is also historical values, 2020 mainly COVID, but they expect from -4 to around plus 3.7 demand in the GDP growth in Sri Lanka, mainly in the, you can see the different sectors: agriculture sector, industry sector, service sector. Now agriculture sector also, they expect a positive growth, but without having this fertilizer, they may not be able to reach this positive thing. Industry also collapse, services industry also collapse. Okay, then these values, what they projected, all these values are not a correct values. That's why we are having this kind of situation. Okay, exchange rate, you can see previously it was held around 2001. Now in January it's 300. Okay, maybe at present now it's around 360. Okay. Now you can see the foreign direct investment flows to Sri Lanka and selected regional peers. Now here you can see Vietnam, other countries having some higher value. Sri Lanka, we got a very few percentage based on the GDP. And impact on the fiscal sector, this is just, I have given some graph to you to go through for your information. Government expenditure, you can see here government expenditure. Every year government expenditure has been increased. Okay, it's not reduced. That means continuously our expenditure has been increased throughout the over years. Impact on fiscal, impact on government debts and sovereign ratings. Here you can see outstanding our debts. You can see here, you can see the inflows and the outflows. Government loans, here we had 2.4 billion inflows here. Then we can see the what kind of outflows. Just see the central government debts in rupees. We are having end of December around 20 billion debt we have to pay. Okay, domestic debt and the foreign debt. Here you can see the different compositions. Year 2021 also there as the total outstanding central government debt. Okay. But here main thing is, do not go through these values in detail, because only after January 2022 they are reflecting the correct values. But we didn't have any other information source, just we have to get it from the central bank report or the finance ministry report. Because of that, these accuracy of these values are completely misleading. Okay, just get the idea that we are having a huge debt to pay. That's the thing you have to see. Okay, here you can see outstanding external debt of the country increased during 2021. Now we are having more than 50 billion Sri Lanka US dollars to pay. Okay, that's the thing. Our present debt, I think that may be correct, because these graphs I have taken from the very recent central bank report. I also heard several news. Our debt is around 52 to 53 billion US dollars. Okay, that may be true because this is the end of 2021. Maybe up to now, maybe it has been reached to 52, 55 billion US dollars. Okay, here you can see our sovereign ratings. Every time countries rating, they are downgrading these ratings. As soon as they downgrade the current country ratings, we may not be able to get the foreign funds from the financial institutions. Okay. Then impact on export earnings and import expenditure. I am not reading, try to read all these things. You can read these things. Just see the trade deficit in 2021. You can see import 20.6 billion, export 12.5. That means trade deficit. This is not in LKR. This is in US dollars billion. That means 8.1 billion deficit with export and import. That means in the current account. That means 8.1 billion deficit. Okay. From 2017 onwards, we didn't have a surplus. Okay. Every time we had a deficit. Okay. That's why all the previous governments also had this issue, but luckily they may had some reserves. That means Sri Lanka had some reserves to overcome the crisis. Okay, an impact on remittances and tourist arrivals. You can see tourist arrivals previously in this is 2021 only from August, November, December. That's the start of the tourist season. It has been reached. Then again 2022 January, February, March, it's around 120,000. Then the workers' remittances, you can see that's the major impact. I think that's the main income source from the foreign countries. That means workers in foreign countries, they remit their salaries to the Sri Lankan families, their families, and their earnings they are saving on maybe the NRC accounts or the foreign accounts. Ultimately, you can see what kind of reduction in the remittances. Okay. Previously, we had around per month 700 million. In 2021, you can see it has been reduced in November, again December, because December some season, people are sending money to Sri Lanka. But overall, it's around a huge reduction, you can see. Otherwise, on average, it's around 500 to 600 million. Let's say 500 million into 12 means it's around 6 billion US dollar, 6 to 7 billion US dollar worth of remittances per annum. But here we had around 3 to 4 billion US dollar during 2021, 2022 also. Previously, we had around 700, 600 million. It's a drastic reduction. Now, this government has to focus immediately, because otherwise, we may not be able to expand our export businesses or any other things. This is the easiest method. You have to give some promotional campaign, and first thing, you have to have a stable social stability and the political stability. And now people are thinking, why we want to send the money to Sri Lanka? Once we send all the these hard-earned foreign exchange, they make probe taken away from our country. That's mentality, that means that reality the government has to address. Okay, then challenges to overcome, mainly the depletion of the foreign reserves. Okay, pressure on exchange rate, need to support monetary stimuli and deal with the possible inflationary pressures in the medium term, hindrance to the monetary transmission mechanism. These are the main challenges we have to overcome to this present crisis. And Sri Lanka now engaged with the IMF program. Yeah, I will try to explain. Sri Lanka has entered into the IMF program from time to time to support the BOP positions and the government reform agenda. Normally, IMF mainly support for the balance of payment issues. That means deficit in the balance of payment. That means why deficit in the balance of payment? I think just keep it in mind. That's the most important thing. Current account deficit, definitely. Capital account deficit and the financial account deficit. Those are the three places. Then let's say indirectly how that when country engage with the IMF, they will prepare a framework. Then main thing, first thing they are requesting to reduce the government expenditure. Why they want to reduce the government expenditure? They want to control the imports. That's the main currency outflow source from the country. That means that's why they want strict measures to restrict the imports. Then how to restrict? Okay, they will request the ban on imports, or they will restrict the they will try to increase the taxation on the consumers to lower their spending power. Okay, that's the main thing. Okay, I'll explain this later. Okay, last. In the current context, an IMF program will be an important part of strategies to overcome prevailing challenging economic conditions in the country, considering current low-level international reserves. Those are the things our government now normally government country is going to engage with the IMF mainly to get the support for the BOP, to enhance the BOP position. Then these are the considerations they are looking at. Servicing the significantly high debt repayments due to the near term will be extremely challenging. I think that's also a main thing. Now we are having, I think, our debt is around 50 billion US dollars, and there are we did not receive the new presentation. Oh. I will check because I have sent this presentation with the health and safety environmental presentation. We'll check with ISL. Okay. Liquidity in the domestic foreign exchange, significant depletion of gross official reserves. These are the main criteria. Inadequate foreign exchange to meet the forex demands for essential imports such as fuel, gas, coal, medicine, and essential food items. Okay, let's see if now don't think now Indian credit line, they are giving credit facility to procure fuel. Okay, now I think yesterday very clearly Prime Minister told, now we have received the final diesel fuel shipment with the 500 million US dollar Indian credit line. That means now I think this during the April, nearly we utilize that 500 million credit facility from the Indian credit line. Now, don't think, okay, India since this is like a government to government negotiation, they are giving this 500 million credit line. Actually, people in the country, no one don't know what are the conditions. Only maybe the Basil Rajapaksa and previous, because he was the previous finance minister who engaged with these discussions. He may knew, maybe top level government officials may knew the conditions, but IMF conditions may be definitely transparent, and we may not expect that IMF will just give 500 or 1 billion US dollars without any condition to procure the fuel for the next 2 to 3 months. Okay, because we need at least 500 million. That means if they grant 1 billion on within 2 months, we will use that fuel. It's not a sustainable thing. It's just like to buy the essential things. Okay, definitely they will have, government has to give a clear roadmap with a that means targets. This kind of way we can, after spending this 1 billion, this kind of objectives we can achieve, and maybe within another year or whatever the things, we may able to recover our economy. That kind of roadmap they have to give. Okay, the only thing is, once government is indicated that they are engaging with IMF, other countries may give financial facilities, because definitely IMF, the other countries or the other institutions may think, once the government engage with the IMF, this process, government process, will be transparent. That's the main advantage if we can go with this that's the advantage of going with the IMF. Okay, just go through these things. This is just a write-up. And since I knew that I can't completely discuss everything in detail, because of that I have prepared some detailed slides for your information. You can see what are the main areas we have to take. That means fiscal consolidation, that means the fiscal policy, appropriate monetary policy stance. These are the main policies they are talking about. Okay, fiscal policy, monetary policy, exchange rate, that means exchange rate policy, phase out monetary financing, reform the state-owned business enterprises. I think first thing, yesterday's speech, President Prime Minister very clearly told, privatization of the Sri Lankan airline. Whether we like it or not, that's the fact. Okay, not only the Sri Lankan Airlines, definitely they will request other entities like Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Ceylon Electricity Board, maybe other state-owned enterprises, at least not to okay, may not be the privatization, maybe to restructure the present system. Okay, then gradually unwinding of capital flow management measures. That means now present, I think previously government obtained so many capital investments as loans to do so many unnecessary projects. Okay, maybe someone can say Lotus Tower, maybe the Hambantota Mattala Airport, maybe the port, maybe those things may not be the prioritized investment, but okay, maybe at that time that government may thought those are the prioritized investments. It depends, but now those investments, you can see, you can judge by yourself whether these things are justifiable investments or not. Okay, that's the way. And these are the stakeholders of the economy. There are so many stakeholders. Whoever you think in an economy, these are the stakeholders. When you are taking an economic decision, economic and price stability or the financial system stability, that will impact on every stakeholder. That's a must you have to think. And these are the critical issues to overcome. That means debt and forex concern, financial sector concern, and the macroeconomic stability concern. In here, I have given some, let's say, ideas, what kind of things you have to think. That means resolving debt and forex concern, monitor forex flows, that means exports and imports, high-level discussion with respective governments to secure short to medium-term government-to-government financing, monetize selected non-strategic and underutilized assets, attract FDIs into the Colombo port city. Here you can mention continue the scheme to pay an extra LKR to US dollar remitted and converted by the workers abroad. That means how to attract more forex to the Sri Lanka. And other main thing is very short term, there are foreign currency loans you have to pay. Those things must be restructured. That means by discussing with those institutions, maybe everyone wants to pay the interest, but that interest also, if they can discuss and postpone, that would give a that will resolve the short-term debt and forex concern. I mean, there are so many things you can identify here. I have given some ideas. Just go through those things. Then resolving finance sector concerns. What kind of finance sector concerns? Maybe debt and finance sector, maybe there are overlapping items, but just go through here, because since I'm during the paper, I'm not asking you to clearly distinguish what are the finance sector, what are the forex concerns, just how to overcome the present crisis. That kind of question will come. Then you can understand and try to write down main concerns and what are the mitigationary actions to overcome these things. Okay, then resolving macroeconomic stability concern. Macroeconomics meaning the whole country-wise. One thing is, I told, development of the infrastructure. That's also one thing. And I clearly told development of infrastructure means does not build the canal or a small road or that kind of thing. That will definitely enhance the comfortability of the society. But that during the recession, government should try to attract more foreign direct investments, or the foreign investment, or the private sector investment to invest on some comprehensive physical investment opportunities. That means bigger ones. In here, they have identified some things, but the only thing is, with these huge investments, with this present economic crisis, no one will come and investment in Sri Lanka, because here they have under urban development, they have identified so many townships and apartments, but we may not able to accept that no one will come and build the apartment in a township or build a township in Sri Lanka, because due to the present crisis, no foreigner will come and buy such a thing. But let's say if they can give us some stimulus package like golden visa system or whatever the thing, maybe that kind of investment may come through. Okay. Then they have identified some major things. One is under urban development, maybe maybe under fisheries and aquaculture, some real estate, and also the power and energy sector. They have identified these renewable energy projects to be developed by the private sector, private investments. Then the pharmaceutical zones, because this pharmaceutical means, let's say in the Hambantota zone, they have requested foreign companies to invest on pharmaceutical manufacturing processes. Then those companies will produce the pharmaceutical products not only to the Sri Lanka, for the whole country. That's where they may able to give a roadmap how to attract the foreign direct investments during this crisis situation. All this kind of roadmap, that kind of thing will expect by the IMF program before giving any concessionary funding to overcome the immediate financial crisis to buy the essential goods, because only China, India, maybe Bangladesh, those countries, they will give, because they can give that money, because majority of the imports we are getting from the India or China. Then they are linked. Okay, they are giving $1 billion and they are giving a condition out of 1 billion, 75%, 80% of goods we have to buy it from the India or China. Then automatically, as there, it's like a book value transfer. Okay, maybe only 100 million, $200 million we are having to buy the other expenses. That's why the main difference between the country financing and the IMF financing, because if IMF is giving a loan or the World Bank is giving a loan, we don't have such condition. We can utilize that money into a prioritize and the important any place to enhance our economy. Okay. I think within that, my presentation is finished. Hope you have understood something, and we'll see what are the, is this question compulsory available in the question paper? Under section 2, I think there will be a question in this one or the international relations. I don't know. It's up to the ISL to decide. Okay, last year there was a question. Okay. Then there's another question. What is the balancing item? I think that balancing item I have not gone through, because when you are preparing some accounting thing, there are items which are not identified very clearly under current account, capital account, or financial accounts, but related to the BOP, then they are including it as the BO balance of the balancing item. If you want to go for a detailed information on the balancing items, it is available in the central bank report, but do not think much lot in detail about thing, but because major impact due to the current account, major impact is from the current account and the financial account. Okay. Are there any questions? Hope you understood the, hope you able to get some awareness on the present Sri Lankan economic crisis, and maybe understand what kind of remedial actions we have to think. Okay, up to now there are some remedial actions implemented by the Sri Lankan government. That's why we can see some stabilization on the US dollar, but to sustain that stabilization, definitely there are a lot to do, then that lot to do means so many sacrifices people has to face. Okay. And I think ISL will definitely distribute this presentation. I thought they have no, in the 22 exports were US dollar 12 billion. Does it includes? Yeah. I think it's not under exports per US dollar 12 billion. Does it include service remittances? I think total revenue, the total is around 12 to 13 billion. Our total revenue is like that. Okay. Normally our total expenditure is around 18 billion and total revenue is 12 to 13 billion. That total revenue means exports, remittances, because in 2021 we had very little, very low remittances. Then the tourism industry also very low. Okay. Then shall we finish? And I think there is another lecture on the international relations that also I have to do on the request of the ISL on, I think, next Saturday. No, according to my knowledge, these international relations and the economy, this policy and economy, both are in the section 2. Maybe they will give you the 2 questions, or that depends on the ISL intention. Sometimes they are giving 4 questions in the section 2, then definitely international relations and economics, this national policy and economy, you will receive 2 questions, but under each section you have to write only 1 question. Okay. Okay, thank you very much and have a nice day. Hope you will write the answers in a good way and wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.